The day she made that promise, the room fell silent. Some people looked away, others shook their heads, a few even smiled, not because they believed her, but because they were sure she would fail. They said no one could do what she had promised. It was too hard, it would take too much time, too much pain, and more strength than one person could ever have. But she did not change her words. She looked at the person she loved most and quietly said, "I will make this happen, no matter what it costs me." From that moment on, every step she took would be a fight against doubt, loss, and fear. If she failed, she would lose far more than her pride. She would lose the one thing she could never replace. Everyone believed the promise would be broken long before the end. They were all wrong. The question was never whether the road would be hard. The real question was this: what could make someone refuse to give up when the whole world tells them it is impossible? Before that promise, her life was simple. She never wanted fame or riches. She only wanted the people she loved to smile and feel safe. They were her whole world, and every choice she made was for them. Then one terrible day changed everything. A moment came that no one could fix with kind words or easy answers. The only thing she could offer was a promise so great that even those closest to her begged her not to make it. They feared she was asking for the impossible. But once the words left her lips, there was no turning back. She knew the road ahead would test her heart in ways she could not yet imagine, but she chose to walk it anyway. The first days were harder than she had ever imagined. She woke up before the sun rose and worked until the sky turned dark, hoping every small step would bring her closer to keeping her promise. But no matter how hard she tried, the problems only seemed to grow. Every answer led to another question. Every little success was followed by a new setback. Some nights she went to bed feeling as if she had made no progress at all. The people around her slowly stopped believing. Her friends told her she was wasting her time. Her family begged her to let the promise go before it broke her. They reminded her that some battles could never be won, no matter how kind or brave a person was. They were not trying to hurt her. They simply believed they were protecting her from more pain. Even strangers began to notice her struggle. They whispered when she walked past. Some shook their heads with pity. Others laughed quietly, saying she should have known better than to promise something impossible. Their words followed her everywhere, growing louder each time another plan failed. The promise also demanded more than kind words. She gave up the little comforts she once enjoyed. She sold things she no longer thought she needed. She skipped meals so she could save every coin. She spent long days working, then longer nights searching for another way forward. Her body grew tired, but the weight on her heart felt even heavier. More than once, she found herself standing alone, wondering if everyone else had been right from the beginning. Maybe she had asked too much of herself. Maybe some promises were never meant to be kept. Then she remembered the face of the person who believed in her most. She remembered why she had spoken those words in the first place. The promise had never been about proving people wrong. It had always been about protecting someone she loved. She wiped away her tears before anyone could see them. She took a slow, deep breath and stood up once more. She did not make another speech. She did not ask anyone to believe in her. She simply chose to keep walking, one small step at a time, even if she had to walk the rest of the road alone. The weeks turned into months, and the promise became heavier with every passing day. Just when she thought she had found a way forward, another problem stood in her path. The little money she had worked so hard to save disappeared faster than she expected. New costs appeared without warning, and every choice meant giving something else up. She could no longer think only about today. Every decision would shape tomorrow. At the same time, more people began depending on her. The one she had made the promise to needed more care than before. There were long days filled with worry and even longer nights without sleep. Some mornings she was so tired that she could barely stand, but she still forced herself to keep moving. She knew that if she stopped now, everything she had fought for could fall apart. Then, for the first time in a long while, a small door opened. Someone noticed her hard work and offered a chance to earn a little more. It was not much, but it felt like a sign that all her effort had not been wasted. She smiled for the first time in weeks. Hope, though small, was still alive, but that feeling did not last long. Just as things seemed to improve, another setback arrived. An unexpected problem took away the little progress she had made. The disappointment hurt even more because she had allowed herself to believe she was finally getting closer. Once again, people around her said it was time to give up. They told her she had already done enough. No one would blame her if she walked away now. She listened quietly, but deep inside, something had changed. The woman who had once feared every failure was slowly becoming stronger. She had learned that every mistake taught her something new. Every closed door forced her to search for another one. Every hard day proved she could survive more than she had ever believed. Instead of asking why life was so unfair, she began asking what she could do next. She learned new skills. She worked smarter instead of only harder. She noticed opportunities she would have missed before. Little by little, her confidence grew, not because life had become easier, but because she had become stronger. The promise still seemed impossible. The road ahead was still long, yet each step reminded her that she was no longer the same person who had first spoken those brave words. She had been tested by pain, shaped by failure, and strengthened by hope. No matter how steep the climb became, she refused to turn back. The promise was no longer just something she had made. It had become the reason she kept going every single day. The day she feared most finally came. Without warning, everything she had worked so hard to build began to fall apart. The chance she had counted on disappeared. The little savings she had left were gone. One bad piece of news followed another, until she could no longer see a way forward. It felt as if every sacrifice, every sleepless night, and every tear had led to nothing. For the first time since making the promise, she stopped moving. She sat alone in the quiet, staring at the ground as the weight of the past months settled on her shoulders. She was tired in a way that sleep could never fix. Her hands were weak. Her heart felt even weaker. She wondered if everyone who had doubted her from the beginning had been right after all. The voices returned to her mind. It's impossible. You have done enough. No one would blame you if you gave up. Those words had once made her angry. Now they sounded almost comforting. Walking away would end the struggle. It would end the pain. For one long moment, giving up seemed easier than taking another step. As she sat there, she reached into her pocket and found a small object she carried every day. It was simple and worn from being held so many times. The moment she saw it, memories rushed back. She remembered the eyes that had looked at her with trust. She remembered the trembling voice that had made her heart break. Most of all, she remembered the promise she had spoken without fear. Tears rolled down her face, but this time they were different. They were not only tears of sadness. They were a reminder of why she had started this journey. She realized that the promise had never been about proving she was strong. It had been about love. Love had carried her this far, and love could carry her one step farther. She slowly stood up, even though every part of her wanted to stay where she was. She knew the road ahead had not become easier. In fact, it might become even harder. But she also knew that if she quit now, she would always wonder what might have happened if she had taken just one more step. She wiped away her tears, lifted her head, and made a new promise to herself. No matter how many times life knocked her down, she would rise again. She might walk more slowly, she might stumble, she might even fail 100 more times, but she would never be the one to break her own word. From that moment on, she no longer chased the promise out of hope alone. She chased it because refusing to give up had become part of who she was. The day finally arrived. It was the day she had been working toward since she first made the promise. She had imagined this moment many times, but now that it was here, it felt even more frightening than she expected. One final challenge stood between her and the words she had fought so hard to keep. People gathered to watch. Some had come because they believed in her. Many others came because they expected to see her fail. They whispered to one another, certain that this was the moment her long journey would come to an end. They said she had gone as far as anyone could. No one could ask for more. She heard every whisper. But this time she did not let them fill her heart with fear. She remembered every lesson the hard road had taught her. She remembered the failures that had made her wiser, the tears that had made her stronger, and the sacrifices that had shown her what truly mattered. Every painful step had prepared her for this one moment. Then the final obstacle appeared. It was bigger than anything she had faced before. For one terrifying moment, it looked as if everything would slip away again. The people watching held their breath. Some quietly shook their heads, already believing the story was over. She closed her eyes for just a second. Instead of thinking about the fear, she thought about the promise. She pictured the face of the person she loved, the reason she had refused to quit through every hard day. That memory filled her with a quiet strength she had never known before. When she opened her eyes, she did not rush. She trusted everything she had learned. She stayed calm, took one careful step after another, and refused to let fear make her forget who she had become. The crowd fell silent as they watched her move forward with steady courage. Then, at last, the impossible became real, the promise that everyone had laughed at, The promise they had called foolish, the promise they believed would never be kept, was finally fulfilled. For a few moments, no one spoke. The same people who had doubted her could only stare in disbelief. Some lowered their heads in shame, others wiped tears from their eyes. They had expected to witness failure. Instead, they had witnessed the power of a heart that refused to give up. She smiled, but it was not the smile of someone who had defeated other people. It was the quiet smile of someone who had defeated fear, doubt, and every reason to quit. The promise had cost her comfort, time, strength, and countless tears. Yet as she looked into the grateful eyes of the one she had fought for, she knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. The days that followed were very different from the ones she had known before. The heavy fear that had lived in her heart for so long was finally gone. In its place was a quiet peace that no one could take away. She had done what almost everyone believed was impossible. More important, she had kept the promise that had guided every step of her journey. The person she had fought so hard for smiled again. That smile was worth every sleepless night, every tear, and every sacrifice she had made. Seeing hope return to the face she loved reminded her why she had never stopped believing. At that moment, she knew she would make the same choice all over again if she had to. The people around her changed as well. Those who had laughed at her no longer saw her as someone chasing an impossible dream. They saw a woman whose courage had taught them something they could never forget. Many came to say they were sorry for doubting her. Others thanked her for showing them that real strength is not found in loud words, but in quiet faith that refuses to give up. Her story began to travel far beyond the people who had watched her struggle. It gave hope to those who were carrying heavy burdens of their own. Whenever someone felt like quitting, they remembered the woman who had kept walking when every door seemed closed. Her journey reminded them that the hardest road is often the one that leads to the greatest reward. Looking back, she understood that the promise had changed more than one life. It had changed her. The pain had made her kinder. The failures had made her wiser. The long road had taught her that true courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to move forward even when fear walks beside you. She also learned that love is measured by what we are willing to give, not by what we hope to receive. A promise spoken with love can become a light strong enough to guide someone through the darkest days. Even when the road feels impossible, one faithful step can lead to another until the impossible slowly becomes real. As the sun sank below the horizon, she stood beside the person she had fought so hard to protect. They did not need many words. Their smiles said everything. The promise had been kept. Hope had won, and anyone who heard her story would always remember one simple truth. The strongest promises are not kept by the strongest people, but by those who refuse to stop loving, no matter how hard the journey becomes. Tell us what you feel about the story on our comments section, and please don't forget to subscribe, share and turn on the notifications button for more stories. Thank you.